You're listening to the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast, episode 71. And if your teen would like something about their study to change, maybe it's their results, maybe it's how long assignments are taking, maybe it's something else, then they're going to need to start doing something differently. I'm Katie Jones, and with over 15 years in education as an award-winning high school teacher, international external examiner, and as a study coach, I've helped thousands of students skyrocket their results and confidence. And this podcast is where I share all my insights, tactics, and tips with you, the parent, so you can help your hardworking teen get happy, smart, and successful in their study, and have you both enjoy the journey along the way. This is the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast. Hey, very important parents, how are you? I hope you and your teens are doing great, and even if things aren't feeling great, I hope that I can pass on to you some positivity and energy through this podcast, because I've got to tell you, I am feeling fired up for this term. We set out our term 4 behind the scenes projects a few weeks ago. And so right now we're in that super exciting and energized phase where we're just getting into those projects and everything is kicking off, including our social media. You might have noticed we are now on Instagram. I know. I am so behind the times. And I'm doing a lot more with our Facebook page. Now, I do like to keep things pretty clean and clear, and I don't want to be just regurgitating and putting out the same things over and over. So I'm going to be keeping my more serious stuff, the actual tips and strategies and information and insights here on the podcast and in my online events like my parent live events, webinars, school parent info sessions. So make sure you stay tuned for those. And I'm going to keep things a little bit more lighthearted and fun, or even funny, over on Facebook and Instagram. So yes, I have gone and opened an Instagram account for Rock Solid Study. It has been, yes, way too long without one. And as much as being a bit of an oldie when it comes to the social media and things like setting up Instagram, oh my goodness, I also have inherited that good old English dry, shall we say, sense of humor. And I'm just sharing that a little bit on those social media channels. So there's going to be a fair bit of sarcasm thrown in because I don't really get the chance to enjoy it that much when I'm at work, either in the classroom or here with Rock Solid Study and sharing all the skills and strategy type stuff. So that's where I'm going to be doing a little bit more of the fun and lighthearted stuff. So if you want tips and strategies and insights, stay tuned to the podcast and stay on my email list and come to my online events. And I should add the monthly Facebook Live open Q&As. And if you want more of the fun stuff, then go find us on Facebook and on Instagram. Be sure to like and follow and select the option that says show these posts first so that you actually get to see them. I will put links in the show notes for this episode for both of those so you can just directly, easily get there, or just type in the search Rock Solid Study on those socials and you will find us. But I can promise the content will be different and hopefully will bring a little bit of a smile to your day. So that's what I'm doing differently this term and for the future, among whispering 2 other projects as well, which I cannot reveal yet, but I will do soon. So right now, let's talk about what your teen is going to do differently this term and beyond, because that's what I want to talk about today. Asking, what are you doing differently? What could your teen do differently in order to increase their grades or boost their confidence in their study, or have them working more efficiently and effectively so they actually spend less time studying and have more time for other things, or maybe have all of those happen? Yes, it is definitely possible to have all of those happen, because we all likely know that quote, if nothing changes, nothing changes. In other words, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. And there's also Einstein's definition of insanity. doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Now, I think those all make sense to most of us, but sometimes it's hard to know either what to change or what to do differently, or even, my favorite word, how to do things differently. So even if your teen knows that they need to or just want to do better in exams, how do they go about making that happen? Or if they know that they could be studying more effectively, how do they actually do it? How do you figure out what you actually need to do differently, and how should you then actually do it? And I have to tell you, I got the title of this episode, What Are You Doing Differently?, from a previous student of the 10WGT, Maxine. And in fact, it was actually Maxine's mum, Natalie, that actually told me about it. But Maxine made such a difference to her results and how she was studying and how she was doing in class in such a short space of time. Maxine was in year 12 and approaching her finals at the time, that her teacher actually asked her, "What are you doing differently?" And the best thing is that I actually have this captured on a recording from Zoom, and I will include a direct link to it in the show notes. They have previously given me permission to share this conversation so that you can actually view the video of that exact conversation. It is condensed down, where Maxine and her mum and I were talking after she completed the 10WGT. But I'll give you a quick overview here, just for context, and then share with you what some of those things were that Maxine was indeed doing differently, so that you have a few suggestions of how your teen might go about doing the same. So Natalie enrolled Maxine into the 10-week program because Maxine was studying really hard, but wasn't really getting the results that she wanted and that they both felt she was capable of. This was especially the case when it came to exams. And Maxine had just had her SACs. She was studying the VCE and she wasn't especially delighted. In particular, she got a SAC result for business studies that she was really disappointed with. And given that she'd spent hours revising and done everything she thought she was supposed to, she didn't really know how to improve. And her mum had found out about the 10-week program. I think she'd come to one of my webinars, and Maxine completed the full 10-week program through August to September. In fact, it actually must have gone, therefore, into early October even, of year 12. A perfect example that it is never too late to get this training and information. And as we were chatting over Zoom when she'd completed the program and they were giving me feedback about their experience, Maxine was telling me about what had been most useful, what skills she was actioning and using, and that her latest marks were now coming out in the 80s. She'd actually gotten 40-something% for that business SAC. And Natalie, her mum, added, after Maxine told me about that result, she said, "We actually just had parent-teacher meetings, and her business studies teacher, that teacher that had marked and given her the results for both of those exams, in that meeting actually asked Maxine, 'What are you doing differently?' Because they had seen the difference in Maxine's confidence and in her marks, and they'd seen those subtle but very significant changes, and in a really short time. Because Maxine had always been that hard worker, and she was still doing that. She was still trying hard, she was doing her homework, she was paying attention in class, but now her results and her grasp of her subject content and her application of her knowledge were all at a much higher level. So, what was she doing differently? Well, one of the most impactful things for Maxine at that time was that she learnt what it meant to be revising actively, not revising passively. And she was using the specific strategies to actually do that in her next round of exams. And you'll see in the video her mum say how she'd seen Maxine revising previously, but even though she was spending hours and working hard on it, it just wasn't really going in. And that's exactly what happens when we revise using passive revision methods. doing things like rewriting notes, transferring information onto revision cards without necessarily transforming the info, things like watching tutorial videos, or copying out diagrams. Because when we use passive revision methods, our brains aren't having to actually process the information and therefore aren't necessarily going to A, fully understand it, or B, remember it well enough. Another thing that Maxine was doing differently was she was now dissecting exam questions and able to understand exactly what was required. She was mark scheme savvy, so she could figure out for herself what the examiner would be looking for. And basically, she'd learned and was applying the 6 elements of exam technique, like identifying and responding to command words, knowing how and when to include examples or case studies, and knowing how to analyze and integrate sources or resources that are provided with questions. Those are just a few of the 6. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent there, and I do have a plan to go into more of the exam side of things on a few of our upcoming podcast episodes. So I will go into these things a little bit more, but all of this meant that she was not only a lot more confident when faced with any question, she was also a lot more effective in responding to and answering those questions, as shown by that jump from being in the 40s to getting over 80% from one term to the next, and right in time for her finals. And another thing that Maxine was doing differently was being a lot more strategic in how she studied. So she wasn't just making notes or just doing practice questions or completing homework in a do as much as possible and hope for the best kind of way. She was able to figure out what was going to give her most bang for buck. So she would be able to use her time and her focus and her energy in a way that would give her best return on effort. So she was less stressed and more effective and more calm and collected and more confident because she knew what she was doing. She knew the best way to go about doing it, or at least had a much better idea of what that was. Because let's be honest, I don't think we're all going to get everything perfect every time. I just don't think that's how life works. But having a much clearer and strategic way to decide how to allocate her time to things and what things not to allocate time to, how to chunk down those bigger tasks, how to tackle questions and homework and assessment so that she wasn't wasting time and energy on things that weren't going to give much payoff and could put that time and energy into doing things in a way that would, or on the things that would. So for term 4, I want to put it out there. What could your teen do differently this term? What skills might they need to develop? What processes might they want to prioritize learning and putting into action? What insights or information do they need to acquire in order to make more strategic decisions and study in a more effective way? You'll be surprised at just how quickly many of these can be picked up and then actioned immediately. So here are a few examples. It might be understanding and identifying command words, the cognitive verbs or the directives in the question, and not just recognizing them, but truly knowing what they mean and what's required in your teen's response. Or it might be getting savvy with mark schemes and really digging into what the wording of the rubrics and the success criteria actually mean and demand. Things like, what is the difference between detailed and sophisticated, for example? Or things might not be exam related at all. It might be something like learning smarter ways to Google for information when doing research. It might be making sure that they never just copy out information, but actually transform it in some way so that they actually process the information in their brain and therefore better understand it, better retain it, and have it flow easily from brain to paper in future. It might be understanding exactly what analyzing truly means and requires. Or it might be having a system to come up with and to craft strong thesis statements. Or it might be as obvious as removing distractions and setting a timer for tasks so they stay more focused, reduce any multitasking, and basically get more done to a higher standard. And yes, I have taken all of those examples from trainings and seminars and resources that I've produced for my 10WGT students. These and many more are all in the 10-week Grade Transformation Program or in the separate Study Vault resource library, which 10WGT students also currently get free bonus access to. So, bonus tip, if your teen isn't in the 10WGT, then A, come join us, or B, you could go check out the full list of the 10 modules. It's all on the website. I will include a direct link to it in the show notes. And treat this like a list of 10 things that your teen could work on. And then pick one or two and have that as the goal for them to figure out and do differently this term. An extra hint, I know, I can't help myself. My top thing to learn and do differently for any student is to develop and hone their exam technique. There is a reason why that often comes up in the examples that I give, because honestly, it doesn't just help in exams. It helps in any type of task, assignment, standard textbook questions. So if you're stuck on what to choose, my advice is that if they've never been taught exam technique, then that would be my top thing, to do exams differently, to tackle and dissect every question using clear steps, proven techniques, and have a strategy. Just don't let them expect to get a different result if they keep studying in the same way. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And because that's the definition of insanity, to keep doing something the same way and expecting a different result. And hey, once you decide on something, what is the thing that your teen is going to do differently? Let me know what it is. I would love to hear from you and love to hear about how you or your teen are actioning any of the ideas or suggestions that I share on this podcast. You can email me at support@rocksolidstudy.com and let me know. And one last reminder to go find us at Rock Solid Study on Facebook and on Instagram. Just search Rock Solid Study and then like and follow to get a little bit more of the lighthearted and fun side of things as well. Have a great rest of your week. I will see you back here again next week. If you're ready to have your teen achieve their best possible results with less stress, then I want to invite you to enroll them in the 10-week Grade Transformation Program, where they're going to learn the key concepts, skills, and strategies to catapult their performance in assessments and exams. It's risk-free. They either achieve bigger and better results with a whole lot more confidence in 10 weeks, or we refund you in full. Just head over to www.rocksolidstudy.com/program, and I'll see you there.